Hello guys, welcome back in Goku Manhwa channel. Let's continue. Matthias watched as Layla turned away from him. Her hands trembled as she reached for the buttons of her blouse. Her jaw clenched tightly as she bit her lip to keep herself from breaking down. Each button came undone slowly, deliberately, as though she were forcing herself to endure every second. This moment felt like the last thing she still had control over, the final fragment of pride she could hold onto. Tears blurred her vision, but she refused to let them fall where he could see. Even as her body shook, she continued, determined not to show how much it hurt her to do this. When the fabric finally slipped away from her shoulders, time seemed to stall. The image of Layla in that moment lodged itself deeply into Matthias's mind, separating itself from everything else, as if the world around them had faded. He noticed every detail without meaning to. The fragile line of her neck, the slope of her shoulders, the unnatural stillness of her back. And then the bruises, dark, harsh marks scattered across her pale skin. They were impossible to ignore. The sight struck him harder than he expected. What shocked him most was the realization that she had carried all of this alone. Despite the pain etched into her body, she had stood on her own feet, had even managed to get on a bicycle in an attempt to escape. The thought of her hiding these wounds, of enduring silently without help, stirred something sharp and restless inside him. Anger rose in his chest, tangled tightly with sadness. It wasn't loud or explosive, but heavy and burning. He stepped closer, carefully, as though any sudden movement might make things worse. As he examined the bruises, the sadness deepened. He told her to let him know if the pain increased, then gently placed his hands where the injuries were most visible. Each movement was slow and deliberate, his own anger swallowed back with effort. He checked her bones and muscles, pausing whenever she reacted, waiting until the tension eased before continuing. Her occasional, muffled sounds of pain made him stop every time. Gradually, he realized that despite the severity of the bruises, her movement was not dangerously limited. Her ribs and spine appeared unharmed. Only after confirming this did he feel his emotions begin to settle, though they never fully disappeared. Standing so close, he couldn't ignore how thin she was, how fragile her body felt, as if she hadn't been taking care of herself at all. In that small space between them, the weight of everything unspoken lingered heavily. As Matthias held her steady, Layla slowly closed her eyes. The weight of her body against his made something in him shift. Only then did he fully understand how small and fragile she truly was, and the realization drew a quiet, unguarded sigh from his chest. He continued to touch her injuries with extreme care, his movements measured and restrained, almost hesitant, as if he were afraid of causing her even the slightest additional pain. Layla stood with her head bowed, her body trembling despite her effort to remain still. The contrast between her thin frame and the gentleness of his hands struck him deeply. His touch was far softer than his expression suggested, careful in a way that revealed how aware he was of her vulnerability. When he spoke her name, she reacted almost instinctively. Layla lifted her gaze and met his eyes through the mirror. The reflection staring back at her looked weak and exhausted, barely recognizable. Yet behind her own image, she saw Matthias's blue eyes fixed on her. Those eyes were familiar. She had known them since childhood, had seen them countless times over the years. And yet, in that moment, they felt distant and strange, as though she was seeing them for the first time. They stood like that for several seconds, both facing the mirror, not looking at each other directly, but fully aware of the other's presence. Fear made her tremble more violently, yet she could not bring herself to look away. Matthias bent closer toward her back, and Layla found herself unable to react or resist. He moved nearer to her wounds, his attention narrowing entirely to the marks on her skin. It was only when he lifted his eyes and caught her reflection again that he realized something unsettling. He was the one who looked away first. In all the years he had known Layla, that had never happened before. His lips pressed together tightly, as though words filled with anger or curses were threatening to escape, but none came. Instead, his breath grew uneven as he leaned closer. Slowly, almost without realizing it, Matthias lowered his lips and placed them briefly against her injured skin. The contact was light, fleeting, and strangely restrained. Layla responded by lifting her gaze toward him, as if acknowledging the moment rather than rejecting it. She tried to reassure him, though her voice remained unsteady. He answered quietly, uncertain of what to do next, his closeness making her tense again. Layla shut her eyes tightly as his breath brushed against the aching wound, the sensation unbearably soft, almost unreal. The moment passed as quickly as it came. His lips pulled away, and Matthias straightened. Without any further reaction, he reached for the medical kit and resumed treating her injuries with calm precision, as though nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. Matthias carefully applied the ointment to her wounds, spreading it evenly before wrapping the bandage around the injured areas. His hands moved with practiced precision, calm and steady, as though he had done this many times before. There was nothing rushed in his actions. Each layer of bandage was placed securely, firm enough to protect but gentle enough not to hurt. Watching him work, it was clear that his movements carried the confidence and skill of someone trained to treat injuries properly. Unlike earlier, when Layla had resisted even stepping into the pavilion, she did not pull away now. She stood quietly and allowed him to tend to her body still, her breathing shallow. The moment the treatment was finished, however, her posture changed. Almost immediately, she began preparing to leave, as if staying any longer would be unbearable. Her movements were quick, slightly uncoordinated, driven more by instinct than intention. Matthias stopped her. Layla turned her head toward him briefly, then looked away again, her expression uncertain, as though she did not understand what he wanted. He handed her a small bottle and indicated that she should drink it. It was a painkiller. Layla stared at the bottle in her hand, silent, unsure how to respond. Without raising his voice, Matthias stepped closer. He placed his hand beneath her chin and gently lifted her face, guiding her rather than forcing her. He tipped the bottle just enough for her to drink. She swallowed the medicine without resistance, and once she was done, he took the bottle back and set it aside. Using a handkerchief, he wiped her mouth and face with quiet care, removing the traces of medicine she had missed. The bitterness of the medicine lingered. To counter it, he reached into his pocket and took out a toffee, then a small candy he had brought along with the tablet. He placed it carefully into Layla's mouth. She blinked slowly, standing still as the sweetness began to spread. Her eyes filled with tears, which he held back at first, but as the candy softened and time passed, they finally spilled over, running down her cheeks in silent streams. As she stood there, overwhelmed, a memory surfaced. She remembered a moment from the past, clinging to a nun and crying uncontrollably. In that memory, the comfort she felt was deep and aching, and the presence beside her felt almost like that of a father. The sensation returned now, quiet and heavy, settling in her chest as she remained where she was, trembling, the sweetness dissolving slowly as her tears continued to fall. After everything finally grew quiet, sleep took them both. It came not as comfort, but as exhaustion. Layla's body gave in first, her breathing slowing as she remained close to him. Her mind, however, did not rest. Instead, it drifted backward, slipping into memories that had been buried deep for years. In her sleep, she was no longer the woman standing there in pain. She was a child again. In that distant place, she remembered holding the same kind of candy. The taste was familiar, sweet, and faintly comforting, yet it had never been enough to stop her tears. Even then, she had cried while eating it, unable to understand why something meant to be kind could not fill the emptiness she felt. The memory carried a strange warmth mixed with sorrow. It was not sharp or violent, only heavy. A reflection of a childhood that felt distant and unreachable now. That nostalgia wrapped around her quietly, pulling tears from her eyes even as she slept. Her lashes trembled, and tears slipped out slowly, soaking into the space between them. Matthias noticed. At first, he thought it was simply the remnants of pain or exhaustion, but the way her face tightened told him otherwise. He spoke her name, low and steady, asking whether she was with him now or lost somewhere else while crying like this. There was no answer. Layla remained still, caught between memory and the present, her tears continuing without pause. Matthias lifted both hands and brought them to her face. His movements were careful, uncertain, as if he feared doing the wrong thing. He tried to wipe away her tears, brushing them aside with his thumbs, but they kept coming. He asked her if it still hurt. At that, Layla opened her eyes just enough to look at him. Her vision was blurred, her eyes shining with tears that refused to stop. She said nothing. After a moment, the effort became too much, and she closed her eyes again. He stayed where he was, watching her. Large drops of tears continued to fall, soaking into his hand. He wiped them away again and again, but his hand soon slowed, unsure of what else to do. The tears drenched his skin, and confusion settled over him. He had no words that felt right. Nothing he could say would reach her where she was. The realization weighed heavily on him. In the end, he stopped trying to fix it. He drew her into his arms, pulling her close without force, without hesitation. That was when Layla finally broke. Her sobs became raw and uncontrollable, shaking her entire body. She cried bitterly, the candy still in her mouth, unable to spit it out or swallow as her tears poured freely. The sweetness lingered uselessly against the overwhelming grief, making the sensation even more unbearable. Matthias held her through it all. He did not speak. He did not move away. He simply stayed. Her sobs soaked through his shirt, darkening the fabric as heavy tears continued to fall. His arms remained around her, steady and unyielding, offering the only stability she had in that moment. Time stretched endlessly as her crying went on, each breath uneven, each sob cutting deeper than the last. Even as his arms grew tired, he did not loosen his hold. He adjusted only enough to keep her supported, allowing her to cry until there was nothing left to release. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the force of her sobs weakened. Her breathing became less broken. The stream of tears slowed, then thinned, until finally it stopped. Only then did her body begin to relax in his arms. Matthias remained there, holding her for a long time afterward, silent and unmoving, as if afraid that letting go too soon would undo everything. He stayed until the weight of her grief had fully settled, until the moment no longer demanded anything from either of them.